Hi, Eddie. Thank you so much for joining us today. Could you please start by introducing yourself and telling us a bit about you?
Well, I'm Eddie Crouch. I'm a dentist working in South Birmingham, providing orthodontic care. I'm chair of the British Dental Association Principal Executive Committee. It's a committee, a board of directors of the BDA that deal with policy with lots of committees under them. My background is in dental politics. I've been a part of the General Dental Practice Committee in the past, and I've chaired the local dental committee conference. So since 2007 I've been very active in dental politics.
So I'm sure you're quite aware of the current dental climate at the moment then. How would you describe the current climate in the profession, how everyone's feeling?
Well, I think it depends on what sort of service you're actually working in. Many of my private colleagues are seeing very busy appointment books. They're very happy in the way that they're delivering care. Sadly, my NHS counterparts are not very happy. And there is a significant shift, I think, in the way that the profession is moving. We sense that there is a move, an exit from the NHS. Many colleagues seem to be reducing their commitment to the NHS, if not handing back contracts. Many of them seem as though they're planning for a future career outside of the NHS. Many, I think, have given up hoping that reform of NHS dental contracts is over the horizon. And certainly throughout the pandemic, I think what happened was a lot of people saw what it was like to actually take their foot off the treadmill of NHS dentistry. They were able to provide a different quality of service for their patients. And when it started to be ramped up after the pandemic and going back to hitting targets within an NHS system that they found impossible to do, they've re-evaluated their career and are thinking elsewhere. And many young colleagues aren't even seeing their future entering the NHS system and are going straight out of dental school into private practice.
Yeah, it's definitely a system that needs a lot of fixing, and to put it lightly, the dentists are definitely feeling unappreciated in NHS dentistry. So what changes might the profession need to see happen in order to feel appreciated again?
Well, what is really topical at the moment is industrial action across the health service. Many people who are taking industrial action, the nurses, the junior doctors, have seen significant reductions in their pay in the last decade. But probably at the top of any league table is NHS dentists. We have seen a 30% decrease in real-term income in the last decade, and the latest Doctors and Dentists Review Body recommendations for a 4.5% pay uplift, when it's translated into a 4.75% uplift in contracts, will not give dentists a pay uplift. Many people are working in a system, in a dental practice where dental inflation is running at 11% or more, and so the longer term future of the NHS certainly needs more funding. We've seen in the last decade a net reduction of about £890 million per year to put it back to the levels of service that we had a decade ago, and even then it wasn't good enough. But I'm sad to say that, in my 2 years as chair of the British Dental Association, I've engaged with 5 ministers responsible for dentistry, which in itself is a significant problem. If you haven't got consistency of the people that you're talking to, then you can't make progress. But every single person that I've met that has responsibility for dentistry, and I met Steve Barclay last week, the Health Secretary, probably the first chair of the British Dental Association to meet the Secretary of State for probably 20 odd years or more. So it shows the significance that the government are putting on this, but we need to see more action. They tell me that there is no more money to put into the system. So therefore, if there is no more money, I think we need to have a frank and honest discussion and an open debate about what level of service they want to buy from dental practices to provide maybe an urgent and emergency service only for the population.
And do you see that as kind of the only solution going forward, or maybe one of the more realistic solutions going forward?
Well, I think to retain the profession, I think we need terms and conditions in a contract that encourage people to actually work in the NHS. And the recent tinkering, the marginal changes that have happened with the contract, I think even the politicians accept that that isn't going to be sufficient to actually retain a workforce. And we're losing people, on a daily basis. They're either reducing the amount of time that they're working in the NHS, or they're considering leaving, as we spoke about earlier. So we need contractual reform. We need it more rapidly than the politicians believe is necessary. And I believe we need more funding. I mean, when the NHS, the areas of the NHS that have needed money in the past, money has been found. So I don't accept that there is no more money to improve dentistry. I think that's an argument that I don't accept. But if it is their only answer, then we have to look at the pot of money that we've got and what service we can deliver for that. And we can't deliver a comprehensive dental service. We only ever had sufficient funding for 50% of the population, going back to 2006. So we've had a problem that's been building for a long time.
Yeah, and obviously these talking with the ministers and politicians is definitely a good way to get the issue out there. What other ways is the British Dental Association helping to put these changes in motion?
Well, the General Dental Practice Committee of the BDA are negotiating with NHS England on future reforms of the NHS contract, and my colleagues around the UK, in Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, are all engaging with their local governments to actually improve the situation for the colleagues in that area. It's frustrating, we've been calling for changes to the 2006 contract virtually since it was introduced. And we've had 9 debates in Parliament in the last 12 months, which is, unprecedented coverage in the Houses of Parliament. We even had 2 questions last week in Prime Minister's Questions. So dentistry is at the highest profile that I think it's ever been at in my career. And if we can't secure improvements for patients and the population of dentists that are working in the UK in this current climate, then I don't think we've got any chance at all. I'd like to thank all the colleagues out there that have actually lobbied their own MPs and educated their own MPs. And I think what the British Dental Association have been very successful recently has been working alongside patient groups, alongside Health Watch, and alongside other campaign groups, so that they understand that this problem is not the making of greedy dentists, it's the problem of the politicians.
Yeah, definitely. And we are seeing currently an improvement in the overseas registration for dentists. Do you think that will help them feel more appreciated, or is this a potential solution?
Well, every single politician that I speak to, and I've spoken to about 120 politicians in my 2 years as chair of the British Dental Association, every one of them starts off the conversation believing that this is a workforce issue, and therefore if we get more people or more dentists delivering the service, the problem will go away. We suspect that if anyone comes in from abroad, and certainly the changes that are being made by the General Dental Council to improve a very, very inefficient and poor overseas registration examination entry system, that will improve the situation for a lot of colleagues who are wanting to come and work in the UK for sure. But my worry is that they will come and work in the UK, potentially initially in the NHS, but I can't see why anyone coming in from abroad would actually think that this is a system that I want to stay in. And my worry is that they will come and work in the UK, stay a very short time in the NHS, and actually leave and go and work in the private sector where they can deliver the type of dentistry that my colleagues tell me that they are able to do it outside the NHS. So there is absolutely no guarantee that if you fill a bucket of a workforce, if you've got holes in that bucket and dentists are leaving, that no matter how quickly you fill that bucket with other people coming in from abroad, you're actually going to solve the problem. What you have to do is solve the conditions and working environment for those people, irrespective of where they've qualified, whether they've qualified in the UK or in other parts of the world. You need a system that encourages people to actually deliver quality care for their patients in a system where they're happy to work in, and it's conducive for them to provide good dentistry.
Yeah, it's not just about recruiting them, but also retaining the staff as well, right? So that's its
Absolutely.
own problem.
I mean, the other thing that I think politicians believe is if they actually build a dental training establishment in their area, that will improve the situation. I think it might do for skill mix. It might do for that. Certainly training people in the east of England, which is what they're concentrating on at the moment, to provide hygienists and therapists in that area. If they recruit from the local area, they may get those people to actually deliver services in that local area. But skill mix, I believe, is part of the solution, but it's not the whole solution.
Yeah, definitely. So until these government level and systemic changes happen, how can the patients and the rest of the dental team help show their appreciation for dentists?
Well, I think many patients do appreciate their dentists. You know, every survey that's carried out and every patient group that I talk to, they value the dentists that they actually attend. So I think colleagues do feel appreciated, and there's nothing better than to get someone out of pain. Dental pain is the worst problem in the world, and to actually able to solve their problems within a short phase of treatment is very rewarding to colleagues, and I think we are appreciated. I mean, there are an element of patients, I think, now that are getting incredibly frustrated about not being able to access services, and I think people at the front desk of dental practices are probably getting far more abuse than they got during the pandemic. Many people, I think, at the end of the pandemic were very appreciative of a dental service. They saw what it looked like without a dental service, so when it started again, they were very appreciative. But I think some of my colleagues are getting the backlash now of people being frustrated about not actually being able to get into services. So there have been schemes that have been developed with the local commissioners to improve access for urgent and emergency care, and they've been commissioned on a way outside of the unit of dental activity, which has been incredibly popular with colleagues in the north of England and parts of the south. So I believe there are ways to actually deal with some of the problems of access for urgent and emergency care, and I believe the population out there understand the problems that dentistry has at the moment, and there's far fewer headlines of greedy dentists leaving the NHS. Many people understand that this is a business viability issue, and actually working in a system where the NHS pays you less than you are actually incurring as costs isn't a business model that's sustainable. So I think patients fully understand that. So yeah, I'm happy that we are working hard on behalf of the profession. The British Dental Association are doing their utmost to improve the situation, not only for dentists who are members, but dentists who aren't members. And I would encourage more of the dental population out there who are looking at why aren't the BDA doing such things? Well, the BDA needs your voice. The BDA needs your resources to actually work on your behalf. So if you can become a member of the BDA, we will become more effective. But from a patient's point of view, we are the patient's advocate. And as I say, other groups like Health Watch, and even a campaigning group that's established called Toothless, we've been dealing with them across the country. There are no longer just isolated dental deserts. We have significant problems across the whole of the UK, and the recent BBC research showing only 1 in 10 dental practices taking on new patients is a serious concern for the population.
Yeah, and definitely, I mean, that was shocking news, I think, for everyone to read. Shocking but not surprising, I guess. But on that note, this might be a kind of loaded question, but do you see an optimistic future for dentistry?
Yeah, I do. We have very, very qualified, very experienced, very capable dentists working in the UK. So, there will always be a demand for the quality services that colleagues provide. So, from that point of view, I'm extremely optimistic. Am I optimistic for an NHS system being sustainable in the long term? No, I'm not. I'm not confident of that. I think we may be even past the tipping point where NHS dentistry may not exist for the whole of the population in the future. And with regards to that, I'm not optimistic at all. And I hope that the politicians realise where we are with that and pull their finger out and work more urgently to actually solve that. The meeting I had with Steve Barclay last week said it was going to be a series of meetings that we were having. Those meetings need to be more frequent, more urgent, more high profile, with a plan that the profession can see is going to deliver in a short period of time. Because if they haven't got any of that, then I'm not optimistic for an NHS dental service in the future.
Yeah, definitely something needs to change. Many things need to change, and urgently, that's for sure. Well, thank you very much, Eddie, for joining us and for sharing your insight into the profession. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I'd just like to thank all the colleagues out there that have been through an incredibly difficult time, working through the pandemic with the high levels of PPE, the dental team members. We sadly got a real recruitment problem for not only dentists but for dental team members, and unless we actually get remuneration packages for NHS dental practices that allow us to employ quality dental nurses, quality dental hygienists and quality dental therapists, as well as practice managers and all the other people in the team, unless we get contracts that allow that to happen, I'm really sorry for the exodus of people with great skills who have trained to work in dental teams that don't see their future working in dentistry, and that is a real shame.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you very much, Eddie, for joining us today, and we'll speak soon. Take care.